Hey everybody, Randy Patterson here, and as you already know, I love to introduce you to new artists, or not new artists, but maybe artists you might not have heard of before, and especially when they're blues artists. In this case, I'll throw a new word out at you. As you know, I made up the word boomerocity, but here's another new word. I did not make it up. Bluesicana. It's the blues and Americana, or Americana, however you want to pronounce it, combined. And that is well represented in this album that you see behind me. It's by David Starr, and the name of the album is Must Be Blue. And it is a phenomenal, phenomenal album. I fell in love with it the moment I heard it. And I think you're really going to like it. David hails from Western Colorado. And when I talked to him, he is visiting family in Arkansas. And we just had a great chat, chatting about this new album, the previous album, his career, rare guitars. He owns a music store or a guitar store south of Grand Junction. And we just had a great time. I think you're going to want to eavesdrop in on this one. While you're listening to it or watching it, would you please hit like and subscribe? It doesn't cost you a thing, but it helps me out tremendously, and I would greatly appreciate it. And feel free to share it with your friends, the music lovers in your circle. They're going to love this interview. So without any further ado, here is my first of what I hope are many more interviews to come with David Starr. Until next time, this is Randy Patterson with Boomerocity. Take care.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. How you doing, David?
Okay, good. Good. Let me get this thing, get some volume here. How about that?
You sound perfect to me.
Okay, good. Well, I'm on this little quick trip to Arkansas to see family and to play a gig tonight, and I didn't bring a laptop, but I have an iPad that I haven't used for Zoom in a while, so
Oh boy.
luckily, well, I had
Played
the
that
phone.
risky, huh?
I had the phone in case, but you never know with
Okay.
this stuff. So, well, thank you for having me. I love the
Well,
backdrop, man. That's
I
nice.
thought you might like that. So
Yeah.
I was reading up on you, and so well, first of all, you're saying you're clicking in from Arkansas, correct?
Yes, Fayetteville, Arkansas.
Fayetteville. Okay. Well, I
Yeah.
worked for about 4 years up in Bentonville. I was in high tech, and there's some little small retailer headquartered up there in Bentonville, and
Yeah.
probably
That's
never
where I'm
heard
playing.
of them.
I'm playing up there tonight, actually, and
Oh, really? Where at?
yeah. Well, there's an old theater a guy's repurposed. He calls it Meteor Guitar Gallery, and
Oh,
it's got a bunch of guitars hanging around. I'm not sure if it's a real guitar outlet or not. I'm not certain about that, but they've got a venue, and there's this group does a monthly songwriter in the round kind of thing. And I did it once
how fun.
before, and then months ago said, could I, I'd like to do it again. Any excuse to come down here is to see my daughter and the grandkids, so
There you
because
go.
that's where I grew up.
Yeah, I read that. That's
Yeah.
here in some of those places you were at. But gosh, I haven't been up in Northwest Arkansas in probably, gosh, 17, 18 years. It's been a while. So,
It's
but
Bentonville. Bentonville has become this. Well, when you got enough money to prop things up, you can kind of make it whatever you want. And it's really, really booming up there.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
They had just built that outdoor mall probably a few months before I took a
right.
different position back in Dallas. But yeah, it was an experience for me there. I wouldn't trade it for anything. It was I
Good.
learned a lot while I was on that account. But I understand you're also from Western Colorado. That's where you live most of the time, right?
I live in a little town called Cedar Edge, which
Mhm.
to give people kind of an idea where that is, if you're familiar with Grand Junction, which is, on I-70 heading into Utah, it's about 50 miles, 55 miles southeast of that. And the big landmark is the Grand Mesa, which is the largest flat top mountain in the world. We're on the south base of that.
Okay.
So
Okay.
it's
Well,
pretty spot. My house is on the south face of Grand Mesa, about 7,500 feet up. So I've got,
wow.
even on a bad day, I've got a pretty good view, as you can imagine.
Oh, I
So
bet.
yeah,
Gosh. Man, that is amazing. It's like I said, it's been a while since I've been there. I'd love to see it again sometime. So,
Yeah,
and I understand you have a guitar store there
I
in
do.
Cedar Ridge.
I started. I set up a guitar store down in Little Rock, Arkansas in 1998 because I was at a kind of a point where I had to decide to do something. I felt the need to do something different with career path or just with my life. And having collected guitars, I looked around one day at my house and went, well, I've got all these guitars. If I had a store, then it would be a legitimate thing, you know? So I had a store in Little Rock for 3 years. But previous to that, I'd gone out near Cedar Edge, Colorado, and bought some land, and with the idea that someday I'd wind up out there. Did 3 years in Little Rock with that store, and then the guy wanted to double my lease amount, my rent,
Mm.
and I thought, well, that's the universe telling me just to go on to Colorado. So I had lived in Aspen in the early '80s, so I was very familiar with Colorado and had gone there a lot. So once you've been out there, it's hard to be anywhere else in a way.
Yep, yep. Well, I'm in the Smoky Mountains, so I have an idea of what
Beautiful,
you're talking about. Yeah. So,
same thing. Yeah.
yep, yep. So I don't know if you saw this. We're going to talk about this album, believe me. But since we're talking about guitar, so I'm not a musician. I love guitars. So I love the history, the story behind them, and
Hmm.
hearing collectors talk about it. But I just watched the documentary on Norman's rare guitars, and
I need to watch that. I've not seen it. I've actually done some business with Bonamassa, so I'm, he and Norm are tight, I know, and so
oh yeah, yeah.
yeah. But yeah, Norm's got quite a history out there.
Yeah, it's a good documentary. I think you'd really appreciate it. And I'm just curious, though. I thought of this because when I started Boomerocity, I was in McKinney, Texas,
Hmm.
and so what there's a great guitar store there called the Guitar Sanctuary,
Yep.
and I interviewed the owner and his wife, George. Oh gosh, can't remember George's last name, but he's the owner. He was mayor there in McKinney, and pretty wealthy guy, and he ordered, he built Guitar Sanctuary. I've only seen when they were in the smaller store, not since they moved into the bigger space. But he was talking about how counterfeits are even hitting the vintage guitar market. Have you run into any of that?
No, but it wouldn't surprise me. And nothing would. There was a period a few years back when even in that little area where I am, where it's not as heavily populated as having been there, that people were coming in with something that said Gibson on the headstock, and it clearly was a fake, made in China thing. And they were cosmetically pretty good, but if you plugged it in and tried to play it, not so much. So, uh, and people want to believe what they want to believe, and they want something for nothing sometimes, and we see that occasionally. My favorite line when people come in and look at a 70-year-old guitar and I've got a high price on it, he goes, sure proud of that. I go, as a matter of fact, yeah, I worked hard to get that. So
That's right.
I'm proud of it. And if you can't afford it, that's okay.
Yeah,
But
that just means they're not as proud. So,
that's exactly right. So,
well, before moving here, I was in Dallas, and so I went to the Dallas International Guitar
yep.
Festival there, a lot Jimmy Wallace's deal. And I think it was the last or next to last time I went there. They had an exhibit of Clapton's guitars that had just been auctioned off,
Uh-huh.
and I saw Blackie, I saw all these
Right.
historic guitars there, and the prices that they wound up selling for at auction, because he was raising money for his rehab clinic in Antigua, and
Hmm.
I was thinking, well, $1 million, but the historic significance
Yeah.
behind those guitars. I mean, I have to admit, if I was a gazillionaire, I would have been bidding them on them too, and I don't even play, but
Yeah.
fascinating business.
I got up one morning, I get up early and go into town and have coffee with the guys. And one morning I noticed they were going to have the Christie's auction of Jeff Beck's instruments,
Hmm.
and it would have been at 7 o'clock my time. So I would have been at the table with these guys having coffee, and they're always, quizzing me about guitars, and they think I'm the expert. And I guess compared to the plumber and the drywall guy, I guess I am. Um, but that thing came on, and I kept showing them these prices, and they're going, £800,000, really? And I said, yeah, that's what they're bidding, but that's one guitar that he played on certain songs or whatever. And that's provenance, just like it would be with a painting or anything else going forward. So,
Hmm.
I in answer to your next question, no, I didn't buy anything. So
Well, I would have been mighty impressed if you had. So
I just had an English muffin and went on. So
that's as close to the bidding as you got, huh?
that's it.
But in this documentary, I don't want to ruin the fun of it for you. But and you mentioned Bonamassa, and I mean, God, that guy has probably more guitars than any private individual, I would imagine. I
I think
last
so,
number I heard was like 600 or something. But
probably.
they were talking to Norman's wife, and because they were obviously broaching the subject of you know what's what's next, because he's obviously he's got fewer years ahead of him than he does behind him.
Right.
And they were talking about who might take over the store, and she said, "Well, my vote is Joe Bonamassa." I'm thinking,
Well,
yeah,
he
I mean, I
Joe.
wonder who has more guitars, Joe or Norman.
I don't know Joe personally, really, but we I had this pair of instruments, a guitar and an amp that had been in the same household since the day it was new in 1960, and that I acquired from a guy. And one day I just on Instagram sent Joe a note, said, "Here's what I've got. Are you interested?" And yes. So we corresponded over a period of time, just text messages and whatnot. And we've talked on the phone 2 or 3 times, and I ended up selling him this stuff. And funny thing, he says, I don't really need this amp. And I said, we all know you don't need this amp, Joe, but that's not the point. And to his credit, he said, because I wanted to sell him both together. And at first he was more interested in one than the other, but finally he did opt to keep them both together. He said, "I'm just sentimental enough that these ought to live together." And I said, "Well, I feel that way, but it's a that's a personal thing." But he was great about that, and we had I'd love to visit with him in person sometime. Maybe get that chance one of these days. But he was
Yeah,
very
I met
gracious
him
over the
in
phone.
yeah, I met him once in person, and I interviewed him twice, and he was in bad moods both times. The last one, you can see it on video on my YouTube channel. Boy, I asked one question, and he just started ripping on Rolling Stone magazine, which made me feel really good. But
Yeah.
he was just tearing into him. But
Well, I don't
anyway,
believe in it. I don't believe in being in a bad mood. So we're just not gonna,
well, so
none of
far I
that.
don't sense that from you. So,
Good.
well, hey, I love this album of yours, man.
Thank you. Thank you.
It is fun. I get the different vibes of it as far as the different genres. What was it you called it? You called it bluesicana or
Well, I
something like
didn't.
that?
I'd like to take credit for that, but I think the PR folks, Kate and Tori and the gals down in Nashville, came up with that, and I said I like that. I think I may have. Um, I bought into it once we got the spelling down. We weren't sure how to spell a word that doesn't exist, but we came up with a spelling that made sense. But I think what happened was, I grew up playing in bands, and so these songs, I would have been primarily a drummer back in the day because that's my first instrument. I was a singing drummer, and so all this stuff is really up in here in my DNA and all that. And I've always played it, but in the last 15 years or so, I've really focused on being a solo acoustic artist for the primary reason that I wanted to challenge myself to do it, see if I could do it, and B, it's just not tenable to haul a band of grown men around anymore if you don't have a big budget, and I
Right.
don't. Uh, so anyway, what happens is you get to this you get in this place where you're really an acoustic artist with the soul of somebody that wants to play in a rock and roll or a blues band. And so when we went in the studio, instead of pushing on one to the side and leaving the other, out there, we just combined them both. So a lot of the guitar parts are acoustic on an album that normally, on a blues album, you might not have any of that typically.
Hmm.
And then my friend Eric Stuckey that plays with me a lot on mandolin, I love playing with him. So I said, come in and play on this stuff. So it's this weird kind of meshing of those two things.
Well, it works. It
Thanks.
really works.
Good.
I And people are doing more and more of that. 2 or 3 years ago, I interviewed the guys in Gangsta Grass. That's the name of the
Yeah,
band, and
yeah,
it,
yeah. I'm
you
familiar
know,
with them.
so and I didn't think I would like it at first. I mean, it's not my go-to music, but I'm not going to lie about it. But
Right.
it worked,
Yeah.
I thought it, so more power to them on that. So what's the story on this particular album? How did it all come about? How long did it take you to put it together and that kind of thing?
Well, the sort of the impetus for doing an album that it's you could call it a blue. We call it a blues album. It's more blues infused, I think, is a good way to look at it because everything's got that bluesy feel to it. But several years ago during the pandemic, when a lot of us didn't know what we were going to do and we didn't know what the world was going to be when we woke up the next day, I'd always wanted to do a cover record. And so I had this big long list of tunes I'd either played or thought about playing or really wanted to get around to playing and recording. So during the pandemic, I would drive from Colorado, would take the 2 day drive down to Nashville, and we'd record. And then I'd go home. So uh, fast forward, this album came out called Touchstones, and it was all the songs were covers except for one. Well, the ones that seemed to resonate the most with people were the blues, um, sort of the bluesy ones. There was a version of Statesboro Blues on there. There was old Gladys Knight tune called "I've Got to Use My Imagination." That while it was more of a soul tune when she did it, we put the blues spin on it. So long story short, we had so much fun doing it and got an audience reaction. Which, if you can get those two things, maybe you're onto something. And I said, well, let's follow that up with something that's kind of straight ahead bluesy, and that's how we ended up. It took about a year to get it made, just between me going down there and touring and all that stuff. So it's been done for quite a while, and the cool thing was that Quarto Valley Records got wind of it and listened to it and really liked it, and they've been really gracious to take me on and help put the record out there.
They're a great label. They really
Yeah,
are. I've interviewed probably most of their roster, and I mean, it's class act all the way. I mean, and Bruce is a great head of that, and you get these guys that love the music that head
yeah,
these labels up or start these labels. You got him, you got Mike Zito, people like that, and
right.
they're all doing great by the artists, and that's good to see. How was this? How was this album different for you in putting it together compared to anything else you've worked on?
Well, more and more, I've been working with I've had the good fortune to work with a couple of people on albums. Um, the two people in particular who've helped me a lot. John Oates was one of them because I've done two records with John,
Hmm.
and that helped me in a way that's completely different than working with Mark Prentice, who I've worked with on this one and two or three others. Mark's Mark's history as a session musician and musical director for the Rascals and Olivia Newton-John, Don McLean, and a lot of people. He's got an arranger's ear and a session guy's sort of sensibility about how to put the session together, how to populate the band, and John does too. But in this instance, it was his idea to bring Reese Winans in. I said we need a keyboard player on this record. He said, "How about Reese Winans?" And I went, "Well, yeah, And Reese didn't know me, but we know each other now. And I knew him from Joe's band and from Stevie Ray's, his history with Stevie Ray, but I didn't even
Right.
know he lived in Nashville. So I think I've learned a lot. I've recorded all my life in one way or another because I grew up with reel to reel 4 tracks and kind of grew through the ADATs and the hard disk machines and Pro Tools and all that stuff. But what I've learned to do through all of this is just turn it over to somebody, let them push the buttons, even though I love the technology, let them do all that and just let me sing and play, which once I did that, I think I got better at it. I think the records got better, you know. So but to do that, you got to trust the person you're working with. So with John and with Mark, it's been a trust thing that I just didn't question. It was great.
Well, to trust, you have to pick them right too, because
Yeah,
it could go sideways if you don't. So
I just haven't had a bad experience with anybody in the studio. I hear horror stories all the time, but man, I love it. I look forward to it. One of my favorite things in the studio is when we break for lunch and I get to hear stories of the road from these guys, you know.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
it's a lot of fun. So,
yeah, for sure. Well, were there any surprises when you were working on this album?
um I think I was surprised about how well it all just came together, and nobody, this idea that it would be this blues kind of thing, nobody questioned that. They all went, well, that's cool. Let's do that, you know. So it seemed like a real natural thing. And some of these people I had worked with prior, like some of the guys that had been in the band when John Oates worked with me on those two records. So we knew each other from that, I won't say other life, but that other feel on the record and the other sort of vibe. And they picked
Mhm.
up right away on the fact that, I mean, they bought into the idea that I could sing this stuff as well as I could sing the other, and that's really the bottom line, I guess. But and that's the thing. I've really worked hard on my singing voice. I don't smoke or drink. I don't. I just take care of it, and I think if you can keep that going, that's the bottom line. So
Yeah, unfortunately, there's a lot of artists that we all know and love that when you see them, you think that they didn't do what you just described, and
well, I
you
could
want
have
to
it could have
love them,
turned
but
out different. Yeah,
yeah, for sure.
I I gave up drinking almost 28 years ago. I've never smoked. So I go to bed early, I get up early. I guess I'm living right, but I'm always pleased and gratified when somebody says, "Man, you got a good singing voice," because that's my instrument. Like I said, I was a drummer. I learned the guitar along the way to accompany myself, and I'm an okay guitar player, but I don't. It's funny, sometimes in my head I don't see myself as a guitar player, even though tonight I'll go and play guitar all night. So it's it's a mental game, I guess. I have to play with myself. But,
What's which song would you point to on the album as a calling card? Because there's going to be people that hear this interview that hasn't, they have not heard of you before. So if you were to
well,
point to a song on this album as a calling card for you, which one would it be?
I'm looking at it here so I can. They all have a sort of a special place. But I would say that first track, "Holding the Page," is one that um, it came to me pretty easily, and I've played it a lot now, and I'm still not tired of it, and I love playing it. I'm going to kick off my little. I'm doing a songwriter round thing tonight. That's the first song I'm going to do tonight, just because it right off the bat it's got good energy, and I feel good singing it. So
Yeah, we get those songwriter things here in the Smokies, and it's been a while. I've got a good friend, Ray Van Hoy, the country
I know who he is.
songwriter. Yeah, and he's a good friend of mine, and he was playing at two or three up here because they do this songwriters festival at times, and
Right?
I've been to one or two in Nashville over at the Bluebird and such, and those things are fun. I mean,
Yeah,
people that listen to this interview, I hope when they hear us talk about it that they hunt some down and just sit there and listen to this because it's such a unique experience of
yeah,
hearing the stories behind the songs and banter back and forth and then playing together. I mean that
yeah.
is just so cool to watch and to experience.
Well, we're in that little town I live in, and you're familiar with it because we talked about that earlier. We're going to the second annual Grand Mesa Songwriter Festival in June, and I'm a big part of that. And my wife and some people with this art center we're involved with. And one of the things I continually hear when I do those around the country and at the one in Cedar Edge, an audience member watching. Let's say tonight I'm going to play with three other people that I've never met in my life. By the end of the night, we'll know each other intimately through the music because somebody might say, "Hey, can you play some licks on my tune?" They might do the same for me. Somebody may sing a harmony part just after they're hearing the first chorus. And audience members always come up and go, "How do you all know what to do? How do you know to do that?" I said, "It's just a vocabulary.
Mm-hmm.
You see it. It's like if you stepped onto the tennis court, you'd eventually figure it out once So it's maybe that's a poor analogy since I don't play tennis, but it's
Neither do
it's
I,
it
but it
is a
works.
it is a fascinating thing. But it's if you're a good listener and you've got a little bit of skill on the instrument and with your voice, you can dive in there and make yourself part of a song you may have never heard. I'll give you a good example if you have time.
Yeah.
I did an event like that in Denver 10 years ago. And it was me and two other people I sort of knew, and then Richie Furay from Poco and Buffalo
Yeah. Yeah.
Springfield.
Hmm.
Richie lives over that way, and I'd never
Yep.
met Richie, but of course I had a great deal of respect for his career.
Great guy.
And
Yeah.
I did a song that nobody had ever heard. The second time the chorus came around, and they were all just sitting there like this, right? All the guys on stage let me do my thing. Second time the chorus came around, I heard this high harmony part. And I thought, what is that? Because I couldn't see out of my peripheral vision where it was coming from. And I thought, was somebody singing along in the audience? Well, it was Richie, and he had heard the chorus one time through, is easy enough. And he came in with this beautiful high part. And we got through, and he said, I hope that was okay. And I said, what, are you kidding me? It was great. So that led to him singing two songs on an album called Love and Sabotage that I was working on at the time. So you just never know what you're going to bump into out there. But that was a high point of my playing career, man. That
Oh, I can
to have him
imagine.
chime in like that, but it was just like an angel out of nowhere, and it was
Yep.
cool.
He's amazing, and at his age to still be doing it,
Yeah, yeah.
he's up
He's
there,
80.
and he's quite talented still. And
Yeah,
I've had the privilege of interviewing him, I think twice, and wow, I mean the guy's really got it. But that's the thing about music, and one of the reasons why I do what I do, David, is there's so much discord in this country and around the
yep,
world that at least here in the United States and probably maybe to an equal extent in Europe, we have this beautiful thing called music that can be a unifier.
yes,
And I was watching the documentary on Chuck Berry a week or two ago, and they were showing some of his crowds when he was first starting out in the 50s. There was segregation and racial tensions and all that. And then they showed the crowd, and it was the kids. And they were in there together, black and white,
yep,
and they were having fun together.
yeah,
And as I tell people, people want my opinion for some dumb reason on everything politics. And I have opinions, but I like what Elvis said. I'm going to keep them to myself. He said, I'm just an entertainer. Me, I'm just an interviewer. I'm not a journalist. I'm an interviewer. I get to talk to people like you. Let's keep it unifying. Let's keep it
yep.
positive by just
I agree.
focusing on the music.
Well, there's a whole machine out there that likes to divide us, and I don't want to buy into that nonsense. And I think I think as I was talking to my friend Jeff Hanna from the Dirt Band years ago about something, and he said, I love this. He said, yeah, there's no percentage in that, meaning there's no point in bringing that up, whatever it was, at the time. But um, yeah, music's a beautiful thing. And I've sung to an audience, and some are thinking one way and some are thinking another, but they're all singing along by the end of the night. That's what I want.
Yeah.
Just for a minute,
Yeah.
they're all together.
That's
So,
right. And, if we can get a lot of those minutes to happen in their lives, we've made the
yep,
world a better place.
here,
But
here.
you're talking about the crowd, though. What is your you play a lot. You'd be able to you're an intelligent man that obviously, and you seem that like you have your thumb on the pulse of things pretty well. What is your fan base basically made up of? What's the demographic of your
I'd
crowd?
say it's older people. What I have come to accept and understand is that at 68 years old, I'm not going to be a rock star. That's fine. I can't stay up that late, but I love to play live. In a busy year, I'll play 60 times a year, maybe. And for a guy that does building renovations, runs a guitar store, is on a board of an art center, I'm in the travel in between. That's enough. Now, this year, I'm
Yeah,
not playing quite that much. I had some medical stuff with my wife early this year that we've gotten taken care of. She's much better, but you know, you
good.
you got to figure out what you need to take care of at home. So I've tried to not book myself too far and wide this year. But what I like to do, and one of my favorite things, I've kind of sworn off playing in bars where there's a TV all over the place with soccer games on. I'm not going to do that anymore. I've done
Hmm.
that. I love playing listening rooms. I like to play to 50 to 200 people, whatever it is, house concerts. I do a lot of that. Um, I have found that it's pretty gratifying to play to 40 or 50 people, even, uh, and have them all like what you do and have
Hmm.
that intimate connection. I do opening stuff. I opened in Grand Junction over the last couple of years, once for Jim Messina, once for America. That's 1,200 seats. That's a lot more fun. That's a different kind of fun.
Yeah.
But I just want to connect with people and tell the story behind these songs and hear what they have to say about it. And it's not the 18 to 34 crowd. I can tell you that. Although once in a while, but
Yeah. Well,
it's
you,
people.
you
It's
know, blues are hitting younger people, and they're
right.
learning about it and appreciating it. You know.
Yeah, with this record, that's a I could angle in there in a different way, but I guess I'm comfortable in my skin now. I don't not trying to be anything I'm not. At some point during this next year or so, on a number of occasions, I want to put together some guys down in Nashville and maybe a group in Denver as well, where I can get out and do some full band gigs because that's a whole nother kind of fun. I can play electric guitar and solo and do some things that I don't get to do when I'm out by myself or just with a mandolin player. But I just love playing live. That's when I feel best.
Well, Nashville's got certainly got the venues where you could do that. There's a couple of
Right,
great small. I mean, we have a listening room up here in Pigeon Forge where I live in
right.
Smokies, and there's the open chord in Nashville, and I'm sorry, in Knoxville. That's an intimate venue there, and I mean, surprisingly big names will come. I say big names, people like Jake Shimabukuro and people like that.
Sure.
They've played there, and so if you get to East Tennessee, if you go east of Nashville, you may as well come to Knoxville, right?
Well,
And
yeah, I've
and
got a
Pigeon
little
Forge.
place in Nashville back when I could afford it. Before prices went completely nuts, I bought a little condo in Nashville. So
Good
when I go
deal.
down there, I actually have a place to be. It's not
Very
prohibitive
cool.
to be there. So yeah,
Hmm.
so
Hmm.
I've been out to Knoxville and done the WDVX Blue Plate
Yeah.
special thing there with Red, and get out to North Carolina and Virginia once in a while. So we're out that way. My good friend Irene Kelly has a place in Gatlinburg,
Oh, really?
a
Okay.
little place that she rents out. Yeah, she's quite
I'm
a
uh,
she's quite a talent.
I'm a couple miles up the road from Dollywood, so I
Oh,
can,
okay.
when they get the train going, I can hear the whistle, and when they do the fireworks show at closing time, I can hear it quite clear. So
Well, that's all right. That's a beautiful part of the country out there.
it really is. I'm blessed to be here. What would you like to eventually do that you haven't done yet musically?
I would, boy, if I could figure out a way to do it, I'd love to take about a four-piece band and go out and do a string of gigs that way. I haven't done that in many, many years just because it's just prohibitive and I'm kind of tied to all those things back home, the business and all that. But that would be fun. It'd be fun to do it, but it's got to be comfortable. You don't want to starve to death out there like we did when we were kids. It's not, it was fun and romantic now, but now it would not be.
Yeah.
But something like that might be fun. We've talked about doing another one of these albums where we do a lot of cover songs. Although I'm looking here, four or so cover songs on this album, and um, but I want to leave behind a legacy for my grandkids where they go, okay, that's who that guy was.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm thinking of them because my job when I'm in town to visit is to show up right before school and take them donuts. So I take them a big old box of sugary donuts and send them off to school. And I'm sure the
Let the
teachers love it,
teachers,
but
yeah, let them deal with the wired kids there at that
yeah,
point.
I think more than anything, I just want to keep playing music. I don't. I've had people say, "You're going to retire from what? From doing playing guitar and singing?" I don't think so. I like doing it.
Yeah, yeah, That's I've been asked the same thing, and as long as there are people for me to talk to, my
Yeah.
my mission is the entertainment interest of the baby boomer generation. So as long as there are people interested in what I'm doing, I'm going to keep doing it. Certainly not for the money, I can tell you that. But
Yeah. Here, here. It's it's and it's funny. I like to get paid like everybody else, but once you put that, and I'm fortunate. I'm in a place where that doesn't have to be as to the front as it might have been when I was younger. But once you sort of not take it out of the equation, but let that take a back seat to just making music, it all seems to take care of itself. I'm going over to Scotland and England next week. I'll have 5 nights in a row there. Then a group of people from our little town are coming over. They're going to meet us over there, and we're going to travel together to several towns with me playing and some local bands playing, and kind of have a musical tour. That's going to be a lot of fun,
yeah.
and so I expect that'll be a whole new experience, and it's going to cost a little to get there, but the payoff's going to be good. I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
I just happened to think, I didn't write this down, but earlier this week I interviewed a gentleman by the name of Ron Soul. He has a radio
I know
program
Ron.
on him. Do you? Okay. Well, I
Yeah,
was just
yeah,
going to say,
sure.
heck, that'd be a place for you to stop as well, as to be on his show and such. But he's got a
Ron's in
new album
Charleston. He's
out
in
as well.
Charleston, right? He's in
Yeah.
Charleston, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
West
Yeah.
Virginia. Yep. I
So,
know him through a friend of a friend named Roger Rabelais. Roger and I knew each other in Aspen in the early days. Roger's actually one of those guys. He said, "Did we know each other when we were in Aspen?" I think, yeah, I think so. But back in those days, it might have been a little blurry. So,
I can't imagine why.
well, we were up kind of late, but we
Yeah,
had
I'm sure that's all it was, too.
we
So,
had big we had big fun.
I bet. Well, David, this is a lot of fun. I appreciate you taking the time to chat with me. It's I know we've been kind of all over the map, but that's what I like, and
Oh, my
we did
pleasure,
talk
man.
about the album. But anytime you've got something going on, you need help getting word out, I would love to talk to you again. And if you're going to be out this way and playing a gig, especially, let me know, and I'll make arrangements to be able to meet up with you. It'd be fun to shake your hand in person and be at one of your gigs.
I will make a point of finding a gig out that way. That's the other thing about this. Somebody will say, "Well, hey, have you ever been to such and such?" And I'll go, "No." I said, "Well, come out here and see what you can find." So it's all about connection and connecting with people. So I'm real grateful for the time, and I appreciate that backdrop, man. That's I love that.
Well, if you want it to use for your others, I'll be happy to send it to you. It was easy to
Well,
make.
I took a picture of you, so if you don't mind, I might post and say we had a conversation if that's all right.
Go right ahead. Go right
Cool.
ahead. This interview will post in the next. I'll shoot for next week, but maybe be the week after. I'm a one-man show here, so I do all the
I
editing
understand.
and everything. So,
Well, you do a good job, and I'm really grateful for the time, man. Thank you so much.
well, thank you, and we'll talk to you down the road.
It's a deal, Randy. Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.
This has been another fun-filled episode of Boomerocity with your host and producer, Randy Patterson. The theme song is Roll the Dice and is recorded and used by permission from Quinton Hope. Quinton is spelled Quinten, and Hope is Hope. And you can find out more about Quinton at quintonhope.com. Post-production is done by Cardinal Sins Productions. The Boomerocity name, logo, and content is copyright protected. Segments may only be used with written permission by Boomerocity and/or its assignees. Inquiries should be directed to input@boomerocity.com. Copyright 2025.